Hey everyone, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and joining me once again, my pal from Rush Fans, Mr. Paul Simon. Hello, sir.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me. You know I love these.
Sporting a very cool Extreme 25th anniversary shirt, and yeah, very very cool. But Extreme were just forming, and the year that we're going to be talking about, and would be another 4 years before we'd see an album by them. So we are going back. So we're like midsummer. 1985, we are looking at the top 200 albums, the Billboard Top 200, biggest selling albums in the United States, all the way back July 13th, 1985. I've dug out all the cassettes of the albums that I have, and I think I was telling Paul that I've got a tenth of the top 200. I've got 10 of the albums that are featured here.
I probably had a comparable number of cassettes. I don't have access to my cassettes. They're all in storage and way too plentiful. But I grabbed a couple albums that I had from back then. So,
Awesome. So what we'll do is I'll start us off with the even numbers, and we'll just go through. And again, we love doing these countdown charts. I like the sheer variety. There is all kinds of music is represented here. So I wish we could get back to that. That's all I'm saying. So let's get started at number 200. We've got a classic guitar player, very influential, Chet Atkins, an album called Stay Tuned. This week, I would say it's dropping out of the chart after 12 weeks. It drops from 187 to 200 this week.
and Mark Knopf, I looked a couple of these up that I wasn't familiar with. I wasn't familiar with The Country Gentleman, but Mark Knopfler and Steve Lukather are both on this album.
That Mark Knopfler doesn't surprise me. Well, I guess Steve Lukather doesn't surprise me either. The guy can play anything.
Everything. It's 1985.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, can we need you for a sec? Yeah, come on in. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
We need a hired gun, fast, and the best. Luke's
yeah,
available.
yeah.
Luke's down the hall. With number 199, 1984 from Van Halen. 77 weeks on the chart at this point. Peak position number 2. It's down from 178.
Yeah, and at this point in time, everybody was waiting to see what was going to happen next. I can't remember. I don't think Farm Aid had happened yet, so the big announcement wasn't made. But yeah. Number 198, we've got the band Midnight Star and the album Planetary Invasion. Now, this album peaked at number 32. It's actually 32 weeks in the chart. This week it drops from 193. Midnight Star, I'm not familiar. There are a lot of bands from this period that are sort of similarly named. I think they're all like R&B bands. There's Midnight Star, it was Five Star, it was Star Point. I don't know. So I don't know what songs they were known for, but yeah, anyway, they had an album crack the top 40. So here we go.
Yep, I remember their existence as well. And
Yeah.
and Atlantic Star is another one I just thought of as
Atlantic
absurd.
Star, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, back to the familiar at 197. 55 weeks on the chart. You cannot get away from this album in this time period. Eddie and the Cruiser soundtrack, John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band peaked at number 9, and it's down a couple of slots from 192 previous week.
That's pretty crazy staying power for this. At number 196, this was the debut album from George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, better known as Wham. The album Fantastic. In the States, it only peaked at 83. This week it's down from 180 to 196. Although 31 weeks in the chart is admirable. I'm just going to guess this album may have re-entered the chart based on their second album and how successful it was.
Wouldn't surprise me. I still remember Wham UK premiering. That's what they had to be originally called here.
That's right. Yeah, that happened once in a while. I think Squeeze had to do that with their first couple albums. They had to be called UK Squeeze, and even this is a funny story. Even the band Bush, like Gavin Rossdale, in
Yeah.
Canada, for a certain time they had to call themselves Bush X because there was a Canadian band from the very early 70s called Bush, and they weren't popular or anything. One of the members was a guy named Dominic Troiano, who was a guitar player who he was in the Guess. He replaced Randy Bachman in the Guess Who. So yeah, you can get like the Bush 16 Stone. I think it's called in Canada. They had to be called Bush X, which is it's just one of those weird things. But then there's the English beat and like Rothschild America. It happens.
Yazoo. That's the first one that came
Yeah,
to mind.
exactly. Yeah.
But I
Yep.
remember Bad Boys, the video for Bad Boys off this album premiering, so it wasn't a new thing when the album that we'll get to later came out. 195, 47 weeks on the chart at this point. Stay Hungry, Twisted Sister, peaked at
Yeah,
15.
yeah. Parents were terrified of this band, but they're truth be known, they were pretty harmless.
On a
Um,
re-entry. I'm sorry, a re-entry into the chart, I should note as well.
yeah, and actually, this isn't the last we'll be hearing from them. Number 194. Here's another re-entry because Born in the USA was such a runaway success. Bruce Springsteen and The River from 1980. It's re-entered the chart. So this week it's up two from 196 and it peaked at number one. So I guess they count the total weeks on the chart. So it's 83 weeks in the chart, which is the oldest album in this chart thus far.
193, we got All the Rage from General Public, 38 weeks on the chart. Pretty impressive. Peaked at 26, and it's actually up two notches from 195 the previous week.
That's funny. I'd mentioned the English Beat. This group came from the English, a couple of them came from the English Beat, and they're best known for their song Tenderness. Number 192. Now, my wife and I talk about this guy a lot because we know who he is. We know what he looks like. We know what he sounds like, but we're hard pressed to think of any of his songs. So, how do we know who Al Jarreau is? Uh, it's it's just one of those things. His album High Crime drops from 186 to 192 this week. It peaked at 49.
All right, and 191. This one surprised me doing a little bit of digging as well. Boy Meets Girl, self-titled album. 11 weeks on the chart, down from 146, peaked at 76. I didn't know they were together before the big Waiting for a Star to Fall
Me
thing.
neither. And apparently they had a minor top 40 single called "Oh Girl," which I'm not familiar with. But they were a husband and wife duo and a famous songwriting duo as well. But yeah, I guess they debuted back in '85. At number 190, we have a re-entry. First week back on the chart, Air Supply's Greatest Hits. Uh, People were loving the Air Supply in 1985 again. Peaked at number seven originally and 16 weeks on the chart, so now it's back.
Did they ever really go away?
Yeah.
Uh, and speaking of which, probably the first true earworm of the countdown,
Oh,
number 189,
yeah.
Solid, Ashford and Simpson, 36 weeks on the chart. It peaked at 29, which I surprised wasn't higher because that's another song that you just once you hear the title track in your head, it's there. No
I
getting around.
think that this was an example of a song where like the song was very popular, the single was very popular, but the album didn't follow suit. It's funny. You get the you get reels on Instagram and Facebook, and I recently saw an old clip of a band I'm not really all that familiar with, but Humble Pie doing "I Don't Need No Doctor," which is just a ripping heavy song for the early '70s, and that is an Ashford and Simpson song, which means that Wasp covered an Ashford and Simpson song. Anyway,
Nice.
I love factoids like that. It just makes me happy. Number 188, Morris Day and the Time with the album Ice Cream Castle. It peaked at 24 in its 51st week of the chart. This week it drops 161 down to 188.
And we're going to hear from a couple members of the time coming up in a little bit.
Yeah.
187 down from 144, 8 weeks on the chart. Yesterday, once more, the Carpenters.
I wonder if this was like a retrospective or whatever, because I think Karen Carpenter died in 1983. I was just a kid in school and hearing about that. It's the first time I'd ever heard of bulimia. And diseases are funny, man. I remember thinking, how could you not want to eat? But
Yeah,
it's real. It's a real thing.
the things we learn. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 186, this band always had really cool album art. The Alan Parsons Project and the album Vulture Culture. Um, Album peaked at 46 this week. It's down 147 to 186.
And that album's going to start a pattern I found for me on this chart of albums in between albums I know really well. So the album before it and the album after it, I owned them both. I didn't remember this one at back at that age. So
I
not
think
sure.
this one had a song on it called Days or Numbers, which I do remember hearing on the radio. Other than that, I'm not really that
I went
familiar.
from Eye in the Sky straight to like Prime Time or Don't Answer Me. So this was the gap for me.
I thought Don't Answer Me was before this.
Was it before this? Okay,
I
then don't
think
answer.
so.
Then to prime time. Prime time's still my favorite. I'm a weirdo. So,
That's all
all
right.
right. I'd look this one up. 185. Arrive Without Traveling from the 3 o'clock. 8 weeks on the chart. Peaked at 125, and it's dropping from 165, so 20 spots down. I looked them up, and they had a song called "The Girl with the Guitar" that was inspired by Susanna Hoffs. They were called Prague, or someone called them Prague at some point. I guess I should say. I'd never heard of them. Very high-voiced male singer. Was a total mystery until I started digging things
Yeah,
up for this.
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of this group, which again by 1985, that's rare that you've never at
Yeah.
least heard of it because the advent of videos here and yeah, that's interesting. Um, Number 184, I do know who this is. The group, it's an odd name, Cock Robin, and the self-titled debut album at 184. They had a one top 40 single, pretty good song, When Your Heart Is Weak. It's one of those deep cuts you hear once in a while, and it was kind of different, but I liked it. There was a guy and there was a girl that kind of shared the lead vocals, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, but I think the drummer in this band was named Lou Molino, and he went on to play with Kim Mitchell at one point.
Oh, no
I
kidding.
may be mixing them up with another band, but I remember seeing them on American Bandstand. So
Stay tuned for Kim Mitchell. But yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I remember a song from them only in the most vague way, something about a promise.
The
So I'm not
Promise
sure.
You Made.
That's it.
The
That's it.
Promise You
That's
Made.
the
Same
one song
album, I
I.
think. But the top
So
40 single is When Your Heart Is Weak. It's yeah,
yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it. I mean, it's definitely pop, but it's like a I don't know, thinking man's pop. I don't know.
Yeah. And I know they were bigger in Europe because I was, like I said, looking things up.
Yeah.
183. This one's a total mystery to me. Hardline from the Blasters. 17 weeks on the chart. It peaked at 86, down from 148. Do you have any knowledge on this?
I think they were like a punky rockabilly type of
Okay.
band. Yeah. And that's just exhausted my I think they were one of those bands on Slash Records.
Okay.
Like that was distributed by like Los Lobos and a few others. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they were like a rockabilly, like a throwback. Not like the Stray Cats, but just, there were a few bands that came out at the time. I want to say like Jason and the Scorchers. Like there were a few bands in the mid 80s that were sort of doing that sort of rockabilly thing. Um, Number 182, I mean, this album I think would be on the charts for at least another 3 years before it finally dropped out. And it's probably back now, spending its 580th week on the chart. You probably all know what I'm going to say. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, just astounding staying power for this album that, considering that they released album upon album after it. And by 1985, they were kind of dormant, right? They weren't really, I mean, this was 2 years before Momentary Lapse of Reason and Waters was gone, but yet this album just hung in there.
Forever and ever.
Yeah.
181. An Innocent Man, Billy Joel. 100 weeks on the chart. Peaked at number 4. That was a bit of a surprise for me. Last time we went through this, it was on there as well, obviously. But yeah, I love this album so much. So tell her about it, Uptown Girl. I could go through the whole every song.
Longest Time. Yeah. Yeah. Number 180, another big album, still hanging in on the charts. The Cars and Heartbeat City. It peaked at 367 weeks in the chart. This week it drops 175 down to 180.
And 179, Bill Withers' final album, Watching You, Watching Me. 8 weeks on the chart, already down from 143. I know this took 4 years to record. That was the one thing that jumped out at me when I was digging stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah, this was the last this was his last he retired from music, but when you write Lean on Me, uh you can do that.
Yeah, you're
And
gonna stay in the consciousness.
well, yeah, I mean, he was 2 years away from Club Nouveau having a number one hit with it, and I mean, he had a bunch of other songs too that probably, I mean, these songs that got sampled. Like, I don't know if he co-wrote just the two of us, but he sang on it from Grover Washington. But yeah, I mean, and he passed away. I believe that he passed away as COVID was relatively a new thing. I remember hearing about Bill Withers passing away. Number 178, a group that I only know about because I watch a channel on YouTube from a guy named Francis Pelletier, and he counts down Billboard charts much like we're doing, but he plays clips. Now, this group, Loose Ends, their album is called A Little Spice, and it debuts this week at 178. Apparently, they had a song. Well, not apparently, they did. I just don't remember it. But they had a song called Hanging on a String or Hanging by a String. I can't remember which, that went all the way to 43 on the singles chart, but I don't remember it. It's very pop. I think they were from the UK, but yeah, that's who this group is.
Right over me. And then the exact opposite, 139 weeks on the chart. 1999 from Prince, up from 183, peak position of 9. So
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
the other one you can't get away from.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Number 176, this was the third album from the band Alcatraz, Disturbing the Peace. And this was the first album that Yngwie Malmsteen was replaced by a guy who some people may have heard of named Steve Vai. So this album, it's got Graham Bonnet from Rainbow on vocals still, but Steve Vai took over on guitar. And it actually peaked at 145 this week. It's holding at 176, but none of those albums were very successful. They were more known for the personnel that was in that band.
Yeah. Another one I hadn't heard of, so I don't know my history from back then. Speaking of, this one came as another shock to me. I alluded to this earlier. 175. We got the self-titled debut from Alexander O'Neal, 12 weeks on the chart. Peaked at 92. Following a disagreement with Prince, he was replaced with Morris Day as leader of the time.
Yeah.
So, news to me. Never heard of
And
that.
I think he had a lot of R&B hits. He had his biggest known song on the pop chart came in 1987. It was called Fake, and I don't remember it. Uh, and I do know that he did a song with the singer Sherelle,
Okay.
and Sherelle originally did "I Didn't Mean to Turn You On" that Robert Palmer had a big hit with. So I know
Okay.
some connective tissue, but yeah,
Got the meme.
that's right. Yeah. Number 174, he's passed away. Famous saxophone player, played with Bowie, played with a bunch of people, probably seen him on a lot of sessions. David Sanborn. His album Straight to the Heart peaked at 64 this week. It's down 10 to 174.
173, we've got the Doors with Classics, 6 weeks on the chart. Down from 124. Is this the greatest hits?
Yes, I think so. And I think what happened was there was well, it was back in 79, but when Apocalypse Now came out, there was a renewed interest in the Doors. And I think a bunch of their albums had been reissued. And so, yeah, there was sort of I think there's one thing I've learned over the years. There's always a reason why compilations come out when they did. There's
Yeah.
always a financial
Usually
reason why
contractual or a movie
contractual
or
or label figures it's time to maybe there's a trend here we can cash in on. Number 172, a group with a name that would never pass muster today. They were an early rap group, the Fat Boys, and I can only guess as their self-titled debut album. They were best known for a couple of songs that were both old songs, right? They did Wipeout with the
yeah,
Beach Boys, and then they did the Twist or Let's Twist Again with Chubby Checker.
yeah.
Maybe it was just a
Beatbox.
twist.
Human beatbox.
Yeah, beatbox. Yeah, but early hip hop peaked at 48, so didn't chart too bad. And this week it's down to 172.
Produced by Curtis Blow, their first two albums. That one I did catch on to. 171, I'm sure you're gonna have more to say than I will, because I only remember their existence, Ron's existence. The Right to Rock from Keel, 19 weeks on the chart. Peaked at 99, and it's down from 159 last week. I just remember their existence. That's the most I got.
Yeah, Keel they were kind of a Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister type of band. This was actually their second album, but it was their first major label album. Gene Simmons produced this album, and he would also go on to produce their next album, The Final Frontier. Ron Keel was the singer. He was in a band called Steeler with Yngwie Malmsteen, and yeah, this probably was their biggest commercial success. That there were just so many bands during that time, but not a bad band. Ron Keel was a great singer, well, maybe still is. But yeah, this would have been a lot of people thought it was their debut, but it was actually their second album. So this peaked at 99. This week it's down to 171, as you said. So I guess I did most of the talking there.
Great.
We're continuing in that same sort of like hard rock, heavy metal that was mid chart successful. Um, first, uh, really one of the only heavy rock bands to come out of Japan to make any kind of splash in North America, Loudness. And this was their international debut album. I know they were on Atlantic Records, and I think Max Norman produced them. So they had some push behind them. Thunder in the East. It peaked at 74, not bad, really. And this week it's down 139 to 170.
And debuting last week, so 2 weeks on the chart right now, we've got Material Things from The Deal. It's up from 182 when it debuted last week. I looked this one up. Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, his band, his group. I did not
Yeah,
know that. So,
and I don't know if he had left by this point, but in 1988, their biggest hit was a song called Two Occasions. It was
okay.
sort of an R&B ballad, I guess a quiet storm type of song, right? Um, Number 168. Now here's a band that I would not have known was releasing new music at this point. The Four Tops and an album called Magic. This week it's up from 173 to 168.
And going back to the hair, well, I shouldn't say hairband, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it, that loud, the good stuff for me. I was just getting into them around then. Autograph with Sign In Please. Everybody knows, turn up the
yeah,
radio. What it,
yeah.
this is what it's from. 28 weeks on the chart. It peaked at 29. It's down from 114 all the way down to 167 this week.
I think Autograph's biggest issue is that they were on RCA Records. Because I mean, Turn Up the Music was a great song, and it was a top 40 hit at a time when bands like this were not having top 40 hits. So they may have carved out a career for themselves. But to be quite honest, I had their three albums in the 80s, and it was hit and miss, right? Like not all their
Yeah.
songs were as good as Turn Up the Music. That was lightning in a bottle. It really was. Number 166, an artist I'm only vaguely familiar with. I think he's kind of a jazz artist. Really not sure. Michael Frank's album's called Skin Dive. And this week, that album drops down to 166 from 137.
165. I keep getting all the good ones that you probably own or have ready to hold up. But Born to Run, another Bruce album that came back in from the whole Born in the USA thing. But 74 weeks on the chart, so it didn't go anywhere. It stuck around. Peaked at number 3 last week. It's up from 170 last week, so sales are still good.
I don't actually, but actually, it's funny. I have a funny story about this. You mentioned it being because of Born in the USA, which obviously it was. I mean, that was such a huge album. But I had a cousin who was a couple years younger than me, and I remember that I went to visit like my aunt and uncle's house, and he was there, and he had this cassette, Born to Run. He's younger than me, and I remember thinking it's kind of odd for. But I think what happened was his mother he'd asked for a Bruce Springsteen tape, Born in the USA, and she got the it had Born in the title and bought him Born to Run because that's not something that a 8, 9 year old kid would be listening to in 1985.
No.
Because I mean, Springsteen on Born to Run is not Springsteen on Born. You're not going to have like young kids grooving out on 10th Avenue Freeze Out, or you just
Exactly.
Thunder Road, or it's a different type of music, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, band that was making inroads. They hadn't quite got their blockbuster out yet, but they were definitely on their way. And this album's going back up the charts. This was the third U2 album. War originally came out in 83 and peaked at number 12. This week, it's up from 167 to 164.
Yep. 163, another one I'd look up. Fiona, real name or full name Fiona Flanagan. 16 weeks on the chart. She peaked at 71 with her self-titled debut. Song called Talk to Me was the single off this. Peaked at 64, and she was on an episode of Miami Vice. She also guested on Aldo Nova's third album, Twitch. I actually listened to Talk to Me and put that in rotation after I looked it up. I like that song.
Yeah, it's
She,
catchy. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
she sings on Aldo Nova's song "Rumors of You." There's a female vocal. She was signed to Atlantic Records, and she was produced by, and I think was involved with in other ways with the producer Beau Hill. And she also starred in a movie called Hearts on Fire, which came out in 1987 that Bob Dylan starred in, and she was his girlfriend or whatever. So
okay.
that, yeah, so she didn't really break as an artist, but she made the rounds there, and I think the most successful song she ever had. I remember it getting a fair bit of airplay in late '89, but was a song that she duetted with Kip Winger called "Everything You Do," and it was a rock song. It had that Beau Hill production, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, number 62, very influential early hip hop group. They hadn't quite hit it big yet. That would be their next album, Raising Hell, but the self-titled debut from Run DMC peaked at 53. This week it's back up one spot to 162.
At 161, George Thorogood and the Destroyers with Bad to the Bone, 30 weeks on the chart, peaked at 43, and it's down from 152 last week, down to 161.
At number 160, she was a protege of Rick James, and actually, I think this was her biggest success. She had a lot of R&B hits, but Tina Marie, her album Star Child, because it had a big hit song on it called Lover Girl. And that's, I think, one of the only songs I've heard from her. This week, that album drops from 132 down to 160.
At 159, 117 weeks on the charts. Eliminators, Easy Top, peaked at number 9, but man, this was around forever.
Yeah, one of the most unlikely comebacks. I'm sure it shocked everybody, including the band themselves. This cassette I'm holding up, by the way, this I didn't have this back in the day. This is one of the ugliest cassette designs known to man. The old U.S. Columbia House cassettes. I mean, could you get any more generic looking?
Yep.
Anyway, I'm not a big fan of those. Number 158, Shaka Khan. You have to say that. That's a rule. That's law.
That's
And
Flash.
her album, I Feel For You, the big title song written by Prince. And but the album peaked at 14. This week, that album drops from 136 to 158.
And when she broke from Rufus, because I remembered Ain't Nobody really well, and then
Yeah,
realized this was her actual solo debut without Rufus. So yeah.
yeah.
She did well for herself.
Did all right.
157. On the other hand, at 157, down from 129 the week before, peaking at 74, 9 weeks on the chart. Bad Attitude from Meatloaf.
Yeah, I mean, he released what, four or five albums in between the Bat Out of Hells, and they just none of them did anything. I think they did well in the UK.
Did they?
I I
Now,
don't
these
think
were not Steinem, that correct?
no, and I think that had a lot. That seemed to have a lot to do with it. He was working with a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
Um, Number 156. This was a band that was like very critically acclaimed, and they're still around in some form or another. Most people know them for their cover of La Bamba, which was a number one hit. But Los Lobos, How Will the Wolf Survive? I think that was their first album. It peaked at 47, and this week it drops to 105.
At 155, one of the best movies I never saw but remembered seeing commercials everywhere for. Big Chill soundtrack is here. 91 weeks on the chart, peaked at 17. This brought back a lot of Motown classics.
Yeah,
Um,
that's basically what I know about it too.
yeah,
I think the soundtrack was bigger than the movie.
yeah.
And the same arguably could be said for the next one at 154, Vision Quest. This soundtrack peaked at number 11, had a number one song from Madonna with Crazy for You. Journey had a top 10 single with Only the Young. It also had Dio, Hungry for Heaven. Um, it's escaping me now. What else was it? It was pretty star-studded. I think John Waite was on the soundtrack. Sammy Hagar's All Fall in Love Again is on the soundtrack, although that was an older song. Tom Cochrane and Red Rider, Lunatic Fringe is on the soundtrack. And, hey, look at that. Yeah,
That's it.
so yeah, that does get a little mention, but yeah, Vision Quest soundtrack drops from 126 down to 154.
And at 153, it's you have Al Jarreau, I have George Benson, album 2020. I heard his name 1,000 times back then. Couldn't name a song. I'm sure you might be able to throw it.
Oh, George Benson, yeah, Give Me the Night,
Okay.
Turn Your Love Around,
Okay, there it is.
This Masquerade, uh, and an instrumental called Breezin', which I guarantee you've heard, you just didn't know what it was called. I
Okay.
can I can talk more about George Benson than I can about Al Jarreau as far as his actual songs. Number 152. I think this is a husband and wife duo, but I'm not sure. I really don't know. Renee and Angela. The album's called
R&B. Yeah.
Street Called Desire, and a big jump this week. Its second week in the chart jumps from 190 up to 152.
151. I looked it up and I already don't remember what I found, but Power and Passion, Mama's Boys, Irish band, Irish hard rock.
Yeah,
This was their second album, 5 weeks on the chart. 151 looks. I think this is where it's going to peak. They weren't big here in the U.S., but yeah, that's all I really got
and I
off of this.
think there were three. I think there were three brothers, and their last name was McManus. And
Okay.
the other thing that I remember about this is that they put out a cover of Slade's "Mama, We're All Crazy Now" right around the same time Quiet Riot did.
Yep.
So, at number 150, holding this week, and this is, I guess, where it peaked. I really don't know much about him other than he was a member of the E Street Band. He also played with Neil Young. Guitarist Nils Lofgren and his album Flip holds at 150 this week.
And getting back to what would eventually become my favorite genre out of this era, Shout the Devil, 149 Motley Crue, 89 weeks on the chart at this point, peaked at 17, but man, it stuck around.
Yeah.
Up from 171 last week, so found new life even after 89 weeks on the chart.
Number 148, Canadian band. They were originally just called the Payolas, but I think commercial interests wanted them to change the name to Paul Hyde and the Payolas, and their album "Here's the World for You." Of course, the guitar player in the Payolas was one Bob Rock, and they were pretty big in Canada. Like they best known for a song called "Eyes of a Stranger," which was a number one song up here. This was not a successful album for them. I think David Foster produced it, and they were trying to go very, very commercial. And I think this was their
They hated
last
that.
album. Yeah, this was their last album for very many years. This was the album cover that uh, Metallica is teasing Bob Rock about. If you watch the year and a half in the life of Metallica home video, they're holding the record club. That's you, and Lars Ulrich says, "Good thing there's no record player here, or else it'd get really ugly."
Okay, I gotta say I know that video much better than I knew Paul Hyde and the Payolas, and but again, I digging it up. I'm like, Bob Rock, how did I not know this? So yeah,
Yeah.
I nothing for me in the
It
U.S.
sounds for those that, oh, Bob Rock, it's nothing like you'd think it would sound like.
Yeah,
Nothing.
sort of like Michael Bolton singing rock. You just don't expect it.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
147, second week on the chart, Under the Blade, Twisted Sister. It's beginning its meteoric rise.
Well, not so much. What
I
happened?
tried.
This was
Come
their
on, Paul.
first. This was their first album from 1982. It was originally released independently on this punk label called Secret in the UK. But because of the success of Stay Hungry, Atlantic reissued it with a new cover. So that's why you have a 1982 album that's kind of climbing the charts. I don't think it would get much higher. I don't think it's certified, but I happen to really like it, and it's by far their heaviest album. Like
Was
it's
Burning in
not.
Hell off this?
No, that was on Stay Hungry.
What was it saying? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like Under the Blade, the title song's really, really heavy. Run for Your Life, Shoot 'Em Down, Destroyer. Like it's. Yeah, I gotta listen to that. I haven't listened to that in a while. Um, Number 146, a UK singer and guitarist, kind of a cult following in North America. I've heard of her, Joan Armatrading, and her album Secret Secrets drops from 120 to 146, actually peaked at 73.
Yeah. The only reason I knew who Joan Armatrading was Melissa Etheridge did a cover of Love and Affection. That was really good.
And if you're a Queen fan, if you're familiar with their album A Kind of Magic from 86, there's a song in there called Don't Lose Your Head. And she's the one that goes, Don't lose your head. Like she does the sort of spoken, the
Nice.
not really the spoken parts, I guess. Yeah, that's her. Yeah.
I have it just out of reach, otherwise I'd dive and hold it up.
Yeah.
So that one I do have. 145, Suzanne Vega, 5 weeks on the charts. This is the album before I would find out who she was.
Yeah.
Peaked, according to this, peak position is right now. It's still climbing, up from 156 last week, self-titled Suzanne Vega.
Yeah. She's kind of a folky, not really straight ahead pop. Luca was kind of a fluke hit single, and well, even bigger fluke was Tom's Diner, but
Yeah,
that's a different story.
yeah.
Um, Number 144, a live EP from U2. Again, they were making some inroads. Under a Blood Red Sky. This week it's up one, but it originally peaked at 28, so I'm thinking it's re-entered the chart.
That makes sense. Yeah, 84. weeks, yeah. 143, Natalie Cole with Dangerous, 3 weeks on the chart. And last week it was 149, so it's up six.
She was about due for a comeback, but I think that was the next album that
Yeah.
she'd come like with Pink Cadillac and stuff. Number 142, Amy Grant and Straight Ahead. Now, I think this album was also considered to be self-titled, but I think this was her first secular album, if I'm not mistaken, because she had a song called Find a Love Will Find a Way. That was
That's
the
off
first.
Unguarded. No, no,
Oh,
I knew my Amy Grant back then.
oh,
I had a
maybe.
friend.
Oh,
It went
okay.
age to age, then straight ahead. Age to age had El Shaddai. Straight ahead, I'm not sure if that was her first secular album, but Unguarded, which came out after Straight Ahead, we'll get to Unguarded soon. That's Find a
Okay.
Way, all that. I very few things I knew big time. Amy Grant on this chart, I did. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right. No, that's good to know. Awesome. So this week, this album is down from 133's 11 weeks in the chart.
at 141, Santana with Beyond Appearances, 17 weeks on the chart, peaked at 50, and it's just down from 134, so it's hanging on.
Number 140 debuting this week. I think the highest debut we've had so far. We're still very much in the era of the soundtrack and St. Elmo's Fire. This had, of course, John Parr with the theme song "Man in Motion," but also David Foster with the love theme from St. Elmo's Fire. You had to have a love theme too, right? So that's at 140 this week.
Yep. 139, 78 weeks on the chart. I believe it because another one you couldn't get away from, nor did I want to, but peaked at number 8. That surprised me a little bit. Hello, I Must Be Going, Phil Collins, down
Yeah.
from 123 last week.
Number 138, this is a UK metal band. They put 3 albums out in the 80s. None of them did all that well, but um, a lot of, like Martin Popoff thought these guys were great. Grim Reaper, the album Fear No Evil, which I think was their second album, that's up from 153 to 138. Probably didn't get a lot higher.
Okay, at 137, and I've got the ellipses, so I hope I get this right. Sam Cooke, I can't say Sam Cooke. I always think Sam Cooke from when the character from The Commitments was talking about him. For some reason, I always get the Irish accent kicking in after that. 4 weeks on the chart, live at the Harlem. Is it Square? Because I can't see farther than that because the
Yeah,
ellipses.
I'm gonna guess it was Square.
Okay.
I don't think it's Harlem Square Garden.
Right, that's what threw me off. It says the
Yeah.
Harlem Spa, and that's all I got. So can't make it any bigger without losing you.
Number 136, jazz legend Miles Davis. His album's called You're Under Arrest. It peaked at 111, and that's where it drops. That's where it drops from this week down to 136.
And 69 weeks on the chart at 135, we've got Cuts Like a Knife, Brian Adams.
Oh,
Peaked
you got
at
a hype sticker.
yes.
That's
Oh,
cool.
yeah. Oh, yeah. This one got a lot of play.
Yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah.
134. I think this is a blues guitarist, Lonnie Mack. Strike Like Lightning. It's up 4 this week.
Okay, and I'm clueless on this one, so if you can help out, awesome. Willie and the Poor Boys, 8 weeks on the chart with self-titled Willie and the Poor Boys. Peaked at 96, down from 108 last week, down to 133 now. No
Now
clue.
now I think this was a minor supergroup of sorts, but do you think I could think of who was in the group? No, I can't. But this is what I remember. Much Music used to play a video by Willie and the Poor Boys, and it was a cover of Baby Please Don't Go.
Okay.
So that's all I can do for you. Sorry. Number 132, a guy who's much better known for his duets. He had a lot of hit duets, usually from movies. Um, Peebo Bryson. I mean, how can you forget a guy named Peebo? That's just. So his album's called Take No Prisoners, and this week it's a second week in the chart. Big jump, 174 up to 131.
And next up, we got Dreamland Express, John Denver. Actually, this is our 131, but up from 177, so big for John. So second week on the chart, but I can't name a single song off it. I just remembered him back then from the Muppets.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got that.
Number Yeah, yeah. Number 130. This was a band that Paul Weller formed after the Jam broke up, but they were very different from what I understand, and I don't know much more than that. the Style Council, and their album's called Internationalists. And this week it's up from 142 in its third week on the chart.
And 129, this one went so far over my head, I didn't think to look up to pronounce the name correctly. So
I think
help if
it's Clue. I think
thank you.
it's
Earl
Clue.
Clue. I knew I'd screw that up if I tried it. Earl Clue, 10 weeks on the chart with Soda Fountain Shuffle. No idea.
I'm just going to guess jazz.
Okay.
That's my guess. Okay. Uh, Number 128 peaked at 26. This week's down from 116. Diana Ross was swept away. I think this album had the song "Missing You," which is a big hit.
Okay. Now that's stuck in my head until we get to the next earworm.
Yeah.
At 127, we got Rhythm and Romance from Roseanne Cash, 4 weeks on this chart, and currently on the rise. Last week it was 130, now it's up to 127.
At number 126, it's a soundtrack, but it's actually just a live album, really. Talking Heads with Stop Making Sense. Now, this is surprising. It only peaked at 41.
Yeah.
Like that's strange to me, considering how many people love Talking Heads. It's just and I don't know.
I think it's thus far. We know this came back sales wise. We have a couple
Yeah,
of sneak back in. So
yeah.
125. Thank you, One Night in Bangkok. We got
Yeah.
various artists with the soundtrack to Chess. 18 weeks on the chart. Funny fact, I did not realize Murray Head is the brother of Anthony Head, who was Giles on Buffy.
Right. And
I had
what
no
else
idea.
what else was he on? I got to look this up. That name is just
I mean,
that.
I didn't find it out looking. I found this out a couple of years ago and
What
had
did
my
you
mind.
say? What did you say his brother's name was?
Anthony
Anthony?
Head. Yeah.
Yes, as soon as I looked at yes, he's on Ted Lasso too.
Oh, there we
It
go.
was
And a
very
great
yeah.
resurgence of this later on. I think it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, some anniversary of it with, I'm going to forget now, way to bring it up. Famous Josh, what is
Groban?
his name? Trobin, what's that guy's name?
Groban?
Trobin,
Groban.
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was part of that. Great version of One Night in Bangkok. Not him, somebody else singing it, but excellent.
I actually didn't know that. But I will say this, that was the first time that I can remember a hit song from a musical,
Yeah.
not from a movie. That was different, or a TV show. So number 124, another soundtrack, Amadeus. Nothing to do with Falco. That was later. This was a movie about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. 56 was the peak. This week it's down to 124.
And a movie I didn't get around to seeing until a couple of years ago. And man, did I miss out. 123. On the other hand, something I know very little about, which is country music. We've got Alabama with 40-hour week. 21 weeks on the chart, peaked at 28, and this week it's down from 96 to 123.
I know they were huge in the 80s, like
Yeah.
so many number one songs, and this is just another hit album from them. Number 122, this is another group I've heard of, but I don't know any of their songs. Maze featuring Frankie Beverly. Their album Can't Stop the Love uh, peaked at 45. This week it drops from 99 to 122.
And at 121, an album I wouldn't have heard about until 1987 when I was a freshman in high school. But Meat is Murder from the Smiths, 20 weeks on the chart. Peaked at 110 and is slowly, oh no, but it's up from 128 last week, so it's creeping back a bit.
I think they were a bit of ahead of their time. They were definitely bigger in the UK, but yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people now will talk about the Smiths and Morrissey and stuff. Number 120, I guess he was not a DJ, but he was like an instrumental producer. Paul Hardcastle and his album Rainforest that featured the single 19. This week it is at 120, peaked at 63.
And debuting this week, this is another one of those in-between albums I didn't know exist. Single Life from Cameo, debuting here at 119. It's the album, Single Life was the album in between She's Strange and Word Up. So couldn't name a single song off it. I didn't know it, but I knew the other two albums from back then.
Yeah, I thought Cameo was new when Word Up came out. It was like their sixth album or something. They'd been around for a long time.
Larry Blackman put it together. Yep.
Yeah. Number 118, another band that was much bigger in their native UK, New Order. The album Low Life. I don't know what songs came off of this one. Peaked at 94, and this week it drops from 94 to 118.
Yeah, I didn't know they were till Substance, another band I was late to the party on. 117, Do You Want to Get Away from Shannon? You remember Let the Music Play? This was
Yeah.
that, I believe. 8 weeks on the chart at this point, and where are we at? Oh no, okay, it's down a little bit. So it peaked at 92.
I think this might have been the follow-up album to the one
That's
that
why
had.
that wouldn't
Yeah.
interact with me. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
116, I do remember seeing videos by this band. They were an early hip hop group, Houdini, WHO, Houdini, and Escape. And for some reason, the song that I remember by them was called The Freaks Come Out at Night.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
115, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. Now, this is another one that came back on the chart too, wouldn't it have been? So 34 weeks.
They had a couple, yeah, I think that they had a couple songs that charted and then dropped and then came back. I don't know about the album,
Frankie Goes
but
to Hollywood, I
yeah.
neglected to say.
At number 114, debut album from this R&B band. When their song "Oh Sheila" came out, sounded very much like Prince. Went all the way
Yes.
to number one, and that was their biggest hit. They had a couple other minor hits, but their debut album is at 114 this week. It's up three.
113, this is another band that I throw out there with, yeah, I wish I should know more and I don't. Helix, we got Long Way to Heaven. 3 weeks on the chart, so it's climbing. It was at 118, up five this week.
Great Canadian hard rock. Didn't really break through in the States like so many Canadian bands. But yeah, this was their fifth album overall, third major label album. This actually was a platinum album in Canada and a number one album in Sweden of obscure facts. But in the States, they struggled a little bit. The albums were out there, but they weren't, I didn't get the push. Number 112, another album that's been on the charts for a long, long time. 82 weeks as of this week. Peaked at number four. Cyndi Lauper's debut, She's So Unusual, this week drops down to 112.
111, another one I'd look up. Alternating Currents from, I think it's Spyro Gyra. Maybe it's Spyro.
Gyra, Spyro
Thank you.
Gyra. Yeah.
Yeah, Jazz Fusion, I think.
Yeah, very much so. You'd recognize this, I think it's called Morning Dance. That was like a hit that I used to hear on AM radio all the time, an instrumental.
Okay.
And the other thing I know about this band is that they had one of their members was named Jay Beckenstein. If you're a Dream Theater fan, their album, oh shoot, why did it go out of my head? It's their biggest album, Images and Words. The song Another Day features a clarinet solo. That's Jay Beckenstein from Spyro Gyra.
No kidding.
Yeah. Number 110, this is a huge comeback album for Chicago. Their 17th album, as a matter of fact, peaked at number four. This week it's down to 110.
Stay the Night, still my favorite video of any of theirs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still hysterical to this day. I watched it before we came on.
Yeah.
109, Face Value, 90 weeks on the chart. Phil Collins, another one you can't get away from. He's got what, three on this
Yeah.
chart
This
right
is
now?
his debut.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Air Tonight. I never heard In the Air Tonight until this year, like until 85, because radio started playing it again. I'd never heard it before.
Oh, okay. I did
I
catch on it and Phil pretty early, but I
yeah.
got inundated as a kid.
I think the only song that I knew from him prior to like Against All Odds would have been You Can't Hurry Love.
Oh God, yeah. You Can't Hurry Love. I don't care anymore. Hello, I must be going. That cassette's buried. I absolutely beat that poor thing to death.
Number 108, I thought this was a new group. I'd never heard of them before in
Yeah.
my young age.
Yep.
Heart with their self-titled album, their big comeback album with What About Love and Never and These Dreams. This week it debuts at 108 and would go on to sell like 5 million copies. It was a huge album, huge comeback.
At 107, a bus that I have missed my entire life. I tried, I couldn't do it. Jimmy Buffett with The Last Mango in Paris, second week on the chart, up from 122 last week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't get it. I don't get the appeal,
Just
but
don't get
hey, I don't. But hey, the guy, a
Live and let
genius.
live.
He had one hit and he parlayed it into an empire. Like seriously, like crazy. You know,
Yeah.
it's like tropical Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that's yeah. Parrot heads. I had a boss who was a parrot head. I'm like, they
Yeah,
just ripped off from Deadheads, and she's like, take that back now.
yeah,
I don't get it.
yeah. Number 106. I'm glad to see this guy on an American chart, but unfortunately, he never broke through. Kim Mitchell. This album had two album covers. Some people may be thinking that's not the one that I've got. This other one's got like a red border, and he's got like hat and sunglasses and smoking a cigarette. Kim Mitchell, Akimbo Logo, was his first full-length album. He'd released an EP a couple years before. Of course, Kim Mitchell was in Max Webster. This had his biggest hit single, Go for a Soda, which did crack the top 100 in the States. He was a superstar in Canada. Like he was a bona fide rock star in Canada at this time. So this week, this album, maybe it peaked at 106, unfortunately, but yeah, there it is.
At 105, I'm so glad this one landed on me. Red 7 with their self titled debut, produced by Mike Rutherford. It
That's
would be a
right.
year before I found out who Red 7 was because Manhunter from Michael Mann came out in 1986, and the song Heartbeat is from this album, and it was used in Miami Vice. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Manhunter was my favorite movie for like 30 years. So glad to see
Yeah,
them again.
that's about what I knew about. I knew Mike Rutherford produced them. That's about it.
Yeah.
Number 104. It's actually up five notches. Barry Manilow, the Manilow Collection, 20 classic hits. Wow. I mean, nowadays, when you look at a chart, there's all kinds of catalog stuff on it. But it's a little odd to see Barry Manilow and then Air Supply's greatest hits in 1985.
Yeah. He had a single off this. I heard it. I was listening to an old American Top 40 countdown, and for the life of me, I'm not. Some Kind of Friend. Was that from this? I
I
wonder.
think that was a couple years earlier. I do
Okay.
remember hearing that on the radio.
81.
That's like 83, which is
Okay.
still later
It
than you
bounced
might
between
think.
83 and 85. Okay.
Yeah, still later than you might think.
Yeah. At 103, still one of the United States' most embarrassing screw ups that we missed this album. But it is 35 weeks on the chart, so we're trying to make up for it. Tears for Fears with The Hurting. At this point, it had peaked at 73, but like I said, we have no good excuse. We blew it. Everybody else, Canada was ahead of the game, UK was ahead of the game. We didn't pick up on it until an album we'll talk about later.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Number 102, I believe this is a classical. Andreas Vollenweider,
Well said.
just guessing.
Let's see.
White Winds. It holds this week at 102, but it peaked at 76.
All right, at 101, damn it. I was hoping you got this one and I got the next one, but I'll have something to say about that one. 101, Purple Rain, 53 weeks at this point, around forever. Couldn't get away from it, didn't want to get away from it. Fantastic album.
Climbing back up too, three spots. So yeah, staying power. Number 100, I'm guessing this is where this peak. I don't know a single song from this group. I know who was one of the members that was in it. I know their whole shtick was when you got to be a certain age, you were out. They were an early version of a boy band, and Menudo, their self-titled, I can only guess is their debut, holding at 100 this week.
Only album that their only single that charted in the US was from this, Hold Me. I could not get away from that video. So that's why I remember it, but that's only because in Chicago, where I'm from, we had Friday night videos. Rock on Chicago was on ABC. MV60, Music Video 60, was a for poor people who couldn't get MTV. We had a 24-hour UHF station that played videos, and Hold Me was like every hour on the hour. They're playing basketball, very boy bandy video.
Maybe I
Cute
have
girl comes
seen it.
walking by. You remember?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
I have now.
I
Although,
just
mind you, that's like every boy band video trope, right? Like, there's a lot of them in
yes,
there because the New Kids on the Block play basketball in their videos too, right?
yeah.
Um,
Ricky Martin was the shortest, youngest at this point, so I do remember this one.
I think maybe see then that's I mean, we're spending way too much time talking about Menudo, but I do want to say that it's kind of cool about this because I mean that song probably hit somewhere on the Hot 100, which means that there were radio stations somewhere in the U.S. that played it a lot.
Up to
So
62.
yeah, so that means that you had almost half of reporting radio stations playing it. It was
Mhm.
probably big in your area. And I totally remember before we had much music where I grew up, half hour, hour-long video programs, you found out when they were and you made a point to watch them because that was your only
Exactly.
exposure. I would have loved having a UHF channel that played all videos.
Yeah.
Um, wow, yeah, that's very cool. Go Menudo.
Oh, but mine. I forgot. Sorry, I monopolized that one, so I didn't realize
Yeah.
this one was mine. The first album I ever owned from them because my cousin had it. The Unforgettable Fire from U2 at 99, 39 weeks on the chart. It peaked at 12. But yeah, this was another one that I immediately gravitated to when I heard it. So
Well,
the
this
other ones
had
I
Pride. I mean, that was their first US top
tried
40
bad, yeah.
single. Yeah. Um, was this
Sort of
have a sort of
homecoming.
homecoming? Yeah. Yeah. I knew there
Yeah,
was another video from it. Yeah.
yeah.
Number 98, this was a boy band that I can actually name some songs by, and they went on to very famous, well-known members of this group. New Edition, which were another band that were formed by Maurice Starr, who formed a lot of these boy bands, but they're self-titled. I don't actually know. I don't think it was their self-titled because they had that one with Candy Girl on it
Yeah, that
earlier
was
than
before this.
this.
Yeah.
Maybe it was their first full-length album. Anyway, self-titled. This week it drops from 90 to 98, and they had Bobby Brown and then the Belle Biv DeVoe guys, and yeah.
Yep. All right, so any of the time I used up on Menudo, I'll drop here. Gravity, Kenny G at 97, 7 weeks on the chart. I didn't know he existed back then. There you
Yeah,
go.
I'd never heard of him until I guess his next album had the Songbird on it.
Yep.
Um, Number 96, another huge album that's hanging in there. 88 weeks in the chart. This week it's still hanging in there. Down 10 notches. Lionel Richie Can't Slow Down.
And number 95, 7 weeks on the chart. Outside my wheelhouse, but I do know all four of them. The Highwayman.
Yep.
Got Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson staying at 95 this week.
My understanding from just bits that I've read is that this album sort of was a career boost for all four of these guys because on their own they weren't selling like they had been, but
Mm,
something about this combination of, and they did two other albums in the years to follow. But my understanding is that this album came out and they weren't called the Highwaymen. This is
mm,
just the name of the album, but they
yeah,
became the Highwaymen. So there
gotcha.
you go. Yeah. Number 94, I think his star had faded by this point. He wasn't having hit singles anymore. Rick James, his album Glow, peaked at 50, and this week it drops from 83 to 94. I don't know any songs from this album, I don't think.
Yeah, me neither. Producing, I've recognized a bunch, but I wouldn't have known his actual songs by then.
Yeah.
Speaking of 93, a band that I really blew the bus on with this one because I could not stand this song when I first heard it and grew to love this band. Depeche Mode, People Are People, 6 weeks on the chart, it's climbing, it's at 93.
This is the first thing I ever heard by them. This is the first song I ever heard by Depeche Mode for sure.
Same here.
Yeah. Number 92, debut. This is well, it's not the highest debut, but it's pretty high. His third album, Weird Al Yankovic and Dare to Be Stupid. Um, the title song, I think, is one of his best style parodies. It's a style parody of Devo. The video's hilarious. It was in the Transformers animated movie, but this album also had like a Surgeon, which was a pretty big video that summer. It had Yoda, which
Yoda,
was
my
uh,
favorite
which
of the
was
album.
which
I
was
don't
uh,
care.
which was to the tune of Lola by the Kinks. It had I Want a New Duck.
Yep.
And then it had that song One More Minute, which was
One
another
more
style
minute.
parody. Yeah, it wasn't one song in particular, but yeah. You don't have a career this long being a novelty act. There's a little bit more to it than that. So
I'll
anyway, Weird
never
Al's
forget the line. I'd rather spend eternity eating shards of broken glass than spend
then
one more minute.
spend one more minute with you. Yeah. Wasn't there a line about blood-sucking leeches or something like that in that song?
Probably. I learned how to
Yeah.
play this on acoustic years ago. I'm since forgotten, but 12 string, it sounds fantastic. Yeah, another one. My cassette's in storage. I love this album. 91, we got Kenny Loggins before the soundtrack thing really, 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 really took him to new heights. Vox Humana, 13 weeks on the chart. I remember the song, and that's the most I can come up
Yeah,
with.
it was a minor hit, and he had a ballad called Forever on this that was a minor hit. Yeah, this was in between Footloose and Top Gun, and this was the start of like, oh, your non-soundtracks are just not gonna
Nope.
connect like the soundtracks. It's like once you take a bite out of that apple, it's yeah. But man, did he ever make a go of it? He had, good 4 or 5 solid hits all from soundtracks. So
Yep.
number 90, debuting, huge debut. The third album from Motley Crue, Theater of Pain. I was scared to death of these guys. Just seeing pictures on my cousin's wall, I thought, they're still kind of scary today, let's be honest. Smoking in the Boys Room's first song I ever heard from them. I didn't know it was a cover. It was many, many years later till I heard the Brownsville Station original. And it's actually they didn't do much to it. It's a pretty faithful cover. So anyway, Theater of Pain debuts at 90 this week.
At 89, I had to look this one up, but UTFO, Untouchable Force Organization, with their self-titled album, 5 weeks on the charts, down from 80 last week. And notable thing, if you follow music history at all, this was the start of the Roxanne Wars, first rap
That's
with diss
yeah.
tracks.
That's about all I knew about this. They had Roxanne, and then Roxanne's Revenge, and
Yeah.
yeah, I've never heard any of these songs. And to be quite honest, until just now, I didn't know what it stood for.
Ah, there you go.
So,
I do have
number
this. Go ahead.
number 88, another big soundtrack. Although really, there were a lot of big names on this. There was really only one big song from it, and that would be Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, the Breakfast Club soundtrack.
How did this peak at 17? That's the biggest shock of this entire countdown for me. Fire in the Twilight only went to number 110 on the Hot 100, meaning it didn't crack 100. But Jesse Johnson, who we'll hear from shortly,
Yeah.
Heart to Hold. This album was everywhere, so I was stunned to see that it wasn't 19 weeks in the chart, already down, peaked at 17. I couldn't get away in a good way. I couldn't get away from this. This is one of my favorite
I
albums.
think I think it's the fact that it didn't spin off a bunch of singles like a lot of these soundtracks did. But yeah.
87. Now, on the other hand, an album you couldn't get away from that spun a bunch of singles out, obviously peaking at number one. We got Sports from Huey Lewis and the News, 93 weeks on the chart at this point, even up 2 notches from 89 last week. So amazing, amazing.
And I think almost every song on this album was a hit.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
Matter of fact, most of the album is in the collection. That's the funny
Yeah.
thing is, a couple discs and almost all of Sports is represented on this.
Yeah. Number 86, the debut album from Julian Lennon, Valot. A couple of hit singles with the title song "Too Late for Goodbyes." This week, the album peaked at 17, and this week it climbs back up 1 notch to 86.
Yeah, I think at this age I knew more about Julian Lennon than I did John Lennon. I didn't catch up. But
Fair enough. Yeah, I think maybe the only song I'd heard from John Lennon solo was "Nobody Told Me."
nobody told me. Yeah,
Yeah,
same here. At
yeah,
that point, yeah.
yeah.
85, man, talk about staying in the cultural consciousness. Dead or Alive debuts with Youthquake. So this has to be You Spin Me Round, because
Yeah, yeah,
anything else from them in the U.S. would be impossible.
yeah, yeah. It
A
was
Brand New Lover, sorry, but I'm
Brand New Lover. Yeah, that's
where
right.
else
That's
started.
right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my bad.
And what's funny about that, You Spin Me Around only peaked at 11. Like, how is that possible? How was that not a top 10 single?
Yeah,
I guess the chart must have been just jammed, right?
yeah.
Um,
40 years later, we still know it
yeah.
well.
Here's a band that we talked about briefly, one of the many star bands. Actually, we just lost a member of one of the singers in this band not too long ago as of filming this, Atlantic Star. And as the band turns, this week this album seems to be holding at 84.
At 83, everyone knows the one song. This actually did have a follow-up, though. Animotion, self-titled album, 21 weeks on the chart, peaked at 28, and it's actually up 2 notches from 85 last week.
Number 82, we talked about Yazoo. This was I think her first album solo, Alison Moyet. The album is called Alf, which is about a year before the TV show Alf. Her album peaked at 45. This week it drops 82.
Yep. And 81, 15 weeks on the chart, Eric Clapton, long before I knew who he was, with Behind the Sun, peaked at 34. Last week it was 77, so it's down a couple.
Number 80 this week, this has got to be R&B. I'm not familiar. Confunction, Electric Lady. This week it drops down from 62 to 80, which is 62 is also where it peaked.
And another band I didn't know back then, Go West, with their self-titled, 17 weeks on the chart at 79, peaked at 60, so it's heading down.
Did a little better in Canada, I think, because I do know a couple songs from this. There was a song called Call Me, and then there was another song called We Close Our Eyes that was
Okay.
a minor hit. But yeah, it was a few more years before they were really well known. Number 78, this was an all-female band, Climax, spelled Klymaxx, because you got to have the double letters. I think this was their first album, but I could be wrong. Meeting in the Ladies' Room, they had a big hit song called I Miss You, which was, I think, from this album. Peaked at 44. This week it's climbing back up to 78.
At number 77, a complete mystery to me, so help. But Graham Parker and The Shot with Steady Nerves, 13 weeks on the chart, peaked at 57. No clue.
So I know a little bit about this guy. This is what you would call pub rock from the
Okay.
UK, and he had a top 40 single from this album, his only US top 40 single, the song called Wake Up Next to You, which was somewhere in the 30s. I remember listening to the countdown and hearing it, but that's about all I know.
Okay.
Number 76 now. I've seen this album. I don't know any songs from it. Joe Walsh. The album's called The Confessor. It was produced by Keith Olsen. It was not a success. This week, well, I guess it peaked at 65, and this week it's down from 65 to 76.
75, got the big soundtrack chart here, too. The Goonies soundtrack. Dave, is that Grusin?
I think so. He's a jazz player.
Thank you. Okay.
And I can only assume this had Cyndi Lauper's "The Goonies Are Good Enough" on it, but well, actually, no. Wait a second now, because the Goonies did have a full-on soundtrack because the Bangles were on it, REO Speedwagon was on it, I think Tina Marie was on it. So
Okay.
maybe this is all. Maybe this is the score. This might be the score. Somebody out there know? Uh, Number 74, solo debut from Mick Jagger. This had a big hit called Just Another Night. She's the Boss. This week it drops from 66 to 74, and it peaked at 13.
Yeah, we're going to see 3 Yardbirds on this countdown, I think. So Jeff Beck represent. 73, Madonna, self-titled, 98 weeks on the chart at this point, peaked at number 8. It's actually down from 69 to 73, but for her, not too bad, considering how long it's been around.
Number 72, my mother actually had this cassette, Hank Williams Jr. and 5-0. It's holding at 72 this week. What I remember about this is that she was playing it, and on that album, he covers Warren Zevon's song called Lawyers, Guns, and Money. And we would always chuckle because that's got a line in it calls "The shit has hit the fan." So it was like, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. At 71, you don't know him as Chris Hamill, but he rearranged the letters in his last name, Lamal, with Don't Suppose. 12 weeks on the chart, down from 40, or peaked at 41, pardon me, and down from 58 to 71. What I didn't know about this is Neverending Story is not originally from this album. After Kajagoogoo, he went solo, released this. It didn't do that well. They slapped Neverending Story on there. Boom.
That happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
that tracks.
Yeah.
Number 70, Leonard Bernstein, which I can only assume this is the soundtrack to West Side Story or a cast recording or something like that.
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. At 69, a name and band that I would not have heard for another 2 years, I think, at this point, but Rising Force from Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force, 11 weeks on the chart at this point, peaked at 60. It's at 69 this week.
And this was his debut album after leaving Alcatraz, the aforementioned Alcatraz, and before that he was in Steeler with Ron Keel and et cetera, et cetera. I always think of the interview I read when they did the hearing aid thing, you know, the charity song Stars, and they were interviewing I think Derek St. Hubbins from Spinal Tap, and he was in character, and he said, "I'm so glad that Yngwie J. Malmsteen puts the J in his name so we don't confuse him with all the other Yngwie Malmsteens."
Thank you, Michael McKean. You're a treasure.
Yeah. Number 60, number 68. This is a jazz. I want to say he's a jazz bassist, but I could be wrong. Stanley Jordan and Magic Touch, up from 76 this week.
67, another album I couldn't get away from and loved it. Big Bam Boom from Hall & Oates, 38 weeks on the chart at this point, peaked at number 5. So you're talking Out of Touch,
Method of Modern Love. Some Things Are Better Left Unsaid. That's an overlooked song these days. They were never the same after this album.
No, agreed.
Yeah. Number 66. So, yeah, first time I ever heard of Paul Rodgers or Jimmy Page. The
Yep.
Firm, their debut album, it peaked at 17 this week. It's down to 66. I have to be honest, I had both Firm albums, and I think that they should have been so much better than they actually were. I think Radioactive is a cool song, but the albums are not good. I just don't think they're that good. I like Bad Company and I like Led Zeppelin, but this I don't know. And I like Blue Murder, and Tony Franklin was in The Firm, right? So it was a super group in waiting because they had also had Chris Slade and drums, who would later
Slate.
be in AC/DC. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. 65, another one that wasn't in my wheelhouse. Never heard of him back then, but Brian Ferry with Boys and Girls, 3 weeks on the chart, up from 82, so it's climbing.
I remember seeing the video to the song Slave to Love around this time, and I didn't know anything about Roxy Music. This is the first I'd ever heard of him.
Yeah.
Um, Number 64, another Depeche Mode album. It's up from 79 to 64. Some Great Reward. 22 weeks on the chart.
63, another one way outside my sphere of knowledge. Black Cars from Gino Vanelli. 3 weeks on the charts, up from 75 last week.
The title song from this is something that every Canadian 80s kid knows. Black Cars Look Better in the Shade. Gino was big in the 70s, but he was more of an R&B. He's from Montreal, but he had I Just Want to Stop, and he had, more stuff like that. This was very pop. This was very synth rock. And that song, like I said, was a huge hit here in Canada. I think it peaked at 42 in the States, but to most Canadian listeners that grew up in the 80s, you say Black Cars and they're, yeah, oh yeah, I know that. It's just funny how the regional thing works. I guess it was a big song in Detroit. But like I said, if a song gets to 42, that's got to have a lot of stations playing it. So it's just
You can cross the border to listen.
pretty much, yeah. Number 62, this was a big album for the Pointer Sisters. I think this had like Neutron Dance and Jump for My Love and Automatic and I'm
Yep.
So Excited. Well, I'm So Excited was done twice. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a remix on this one,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the Pointer Sisters break out. This week it's down to 62. The album peaked at number 8.
At 61, Marvin Gaye. To be honest, I didn't know who he was except for Sexual Healing until after, unfortunately, he passed.
Yeah.
Dream of a Lifetime, 6 weeks on the charts, so peaked at 41.
This guessing this was a posthumously
Thank you.
released album that he had been working on. I'm not really sure. Next up, a terribly fractured band. I don't know what's going. I don't know why they can't mend the fences. I have
Oh.
no idea what's going on with Kevin Cronin and the rest of those guys. But this was a big album for them. Wasn't quite as big as High Infidelity, but it was bigger than Good Trouble. REO Speedwagon, Wheels Are Turning, peaked at 7. This week it's down from 47 to 60.
With my favorite song of theirs, which is I Don't Want to Know. Easily my favorite REO song.
It's
59, Gotta Be Country, totally out of my wheelhouse. Lone Justice from Lone Justice, no clue, 10 weeks on the
well,
chart.
country, more. I don't know if you'd call it cowpunk. They had a lot of ties to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. The
Oh,
singer in this band was named Maria McKee, and
okay.
they were very hyped by the industry. Jimmy Iovine produced them. They were on Geffen Records. They had a song called Ways to Be Wicked, which was a minor hit. They had another song on their next album called Shelter, which almost hit the top 40, but never really broke through. So you're forgiven for not knowing who they were.
Thank you.
Number 58, we just lost Brian Wilson. I, to be honest, don't know if he was involved in this album because he came and went. This was a self-titled album from the Beach Boys. I remember this because it had a song on it called Get You Back, which was a minor top 40 hit. And, listening to the radio actively, I never thought I'd hear a new Beach Boys song on the charts. So this week, this album, well, it's up. It's up from 64 to 58. I don't know if it would get that much higher.
And number 57, staying here from last week as well. We already heard She's So Unusual. Now it's Nervous Night from the Hooters. 8 weeks on the chart. Another cassette I just beat the daylights out of back then.
Yeah. It's funny because most people will say that the song they know the best is And We Danced, but Day by Day charted higher.
Day by Day, All You Zombies. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where Do the Children Go with Patti
Yeah.
Smythe? Yeah.
Yep.
That was a big album. And yeah, you're right. You listen to especially Time After Time, and you can hear what was his name? Rob Bazillion, was that his name? The singer? You can hear him plain as day singing
Could be
on the
right.
chorus. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were essentially the backing band on She's So
Yes.
Unusual. Yeah.
Yes.
They were like her Toto.
Exactly.
Uh, Number 56, Run DMC. The album's called King of Rock. That's kind of their nickname too, I think, the Kings of Rock. This week it's down from 52.
Now that's stuck in my head because man, we heard that a lot here.
Yeah,
The king of rock, there is none higher. Sucker MCs call me sigh. All right,
yeah.
55. We Are the World. 13 weeks on the chart at this point. I'm surprised it wasn't longer. It feels like forever. Obviously peaked at number one, down from 46 last week. USA for Africa.
Something that I find odd about this, and I didn't know this for many, many years. This album, if you bought it on vinyl or cassette, was on CBS.
Okay.
But if you bought the CD, it was on Polygram. And I'm not talking about it in a different country. That must have just been an agreement they made because of all the different artists that were on it.
That figures.
Actually, I think you know what? Where I read that was a book that came out in the early 2000s. What is his name? I got the book right for Robert Teleria. It was a book about Rush called Merely Players, and it
Oh,
listed all of the because the Northern Lights song "Tears
hmm.
Are Not Enough" is on
Yeah.
"We Are the World" and Geddy Lee is on that. So I'm like, why is it listing the CD as on Polygram? That must be a mistake. Well, it's not. So number 54 peaked at 12. The title song was a huge hit. That was about it. Commodores and Night Shift.
And number 53, 40 weeks on the chart at this point. Tooth and Nail, Dokken. The minute I saw that, I had to put Alone Again on. Had to hear it. Which I found out, I did not know this, didn't go platinum until 1989 after the strength of Back for the Attack
Yeah.
and Under Lock and Key.
And after they'd broken up.
Yeah,
Weird. Yeah. They were their own worst enemy. They could have been huge. Number 52, an artist I thought had more big hits than she actually did. I
yeah.
knew she was more than I knew the songs that she had, but Kim Carnes, the album's called Barking at Airplanes. Now, this did have a fairly big hit on it called Crazy in the Night, which is a super catchy song. Um, and even though it peaked at number 15, unless you count like the duets she had with like Kenny Rogers,
Mhm.
that was her second biggest charting song at 15 after Betty Davis Eyes. So anyway, the album Barking at Airplanes in the third week on the chart up from 68 to 52.
And at 51, an album we both love, Agent Provocateur from Foreigner, 28 weeks on the chart. That was yesterday. Still my favorite Foreigner song
Oh
by
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
such a great.
What I find is interesting about these two albums we just talked about is that both of these albums have songs called Tooth and Nail. And bass player Jeff Pilson has played with both. But yeah, number 50. This is interesting though. This is how a career just slams to a halt because this band's first two albums were both fairly popular. Both had big hit singles off them, Business as Usual and Cargo. The third and I think final album from Men at Work,
I
Two
know a lot
Hearts,
about this, so yes,
uh,
fine.
peaks peaks at number 50 this week. And the only thing I know from this album is they had a song called Everything I Need that almost hit the top 40.
Yeah, the band has been falling apart by then. The full band's not even on the full album. Ron Streicher was gone. Jerry Spicer, I think, was the first one to leave. Eric Hansen and I did an episode of Grant's Rock Warehouse where we dissected Men at Work ad nauseum, like with a fine tooth comb. And what's funny is Liam Hare and Bicycle Legs did an entire episode defending this album because we had not given it the appreciation that it deserved. But yeah, I was a diehard Men at Work freak. I got this and I'm like, what is this? It just didn't resonate with me. So call it a US thing. I'm not blaming them, but different for me.
You know, it's interesting because you've got what Martin Popoff would call a compromised lineup, right? And that's never good. I think, yeah, what they do lose their rhythm section.
Yeah. The only
Yeah.
for the most part it was Callahan and Greg Ham, Men at Work in name only, and they would come back obviously in '99 with Brazil. But just yeah, Cargo, and I've got Cargo and Business as Usual sitting right over there.
But it's so funny because their first two albums were so big, and I don't even think this went gold. Like it just, I
No,
was like, it didn't even have that slow decline. It was over.
yeah.
Yeah. Number, go ahead. You sound like
I've
you
got
had more
nothing
to
to say
say.
about it, so you'll
Oh,
probably say more than I will. But Dan
okay.
Fogelberg with the High Country Snows, 10 weeks on the chart.
Yeah, I don't know anything from this. Of course, sort of like folk country. died very young. He's been gone, I think, since 2007 or something like that. He died young.
Yeah.
Number 48. So yeah, he was a former member of the Revolution, I think. Am I right? Jesse
Time.
Johnson, The Time. So Jesse
Yeah.
Johnson's review, debut album.
Yep.
This week it drops from 43 down to 48. Now, I don't know how I remember this, Paul, but I remember watching Much Music, and one of the VJs was talking about, there was a split, right? And I don't think
Yeah.
it was an amicable one.
It was not.
Even though it was the time, yes, obviously Prince was very much involved, right? And apparently Prince called him up in the middle of the night and just said, "Jesse, your album sucks." Click. I don't know why I remember that. It just made me laugh. "Jesse, your album sucks."
What are you really
Anyway,
trying to say, Prince?
yeah, yeah. Can you
And,
elaborate on that?
and for those who care, this is Jesse's second appearance on this chart because Heart Too Hard to Hold is off the Breakfast Club soundtrack. Love that song as well. So he got around. 47, I remember the poster. I remember the horrible commercial. I never saw it because I was too young when it came out. And by the time I was old enough to, I didn't want to for all the Razzies. But impressive soundtrack. Perfect. The movie Perfect, before I get too
Yep.
far off track here. 3 weeks on the chart. Still climbing, up from 52 last week. But this blew my mind. Wham Rap was on this. Lay Your Hands on Me from the Thompson Twins was on this.
Wow.
18% Rotten Tomatoes score for the movie. Tarantino in 1994 called it a woefully underappreciated film. Clearly, there was some under the influence of something, but yeah, just horrible.
Tarantino? No.
The
He seems
perfect.
so normal to me. But
Yeah.
yeah, this was the Jamie Lee Curtis, John Travolta workout gym movie. It's been spoofed many, many times. Actually, it wasn't that long ago that she was on Jimmy Fallon, and they did a pretty funny parody of it.
Oh, cool. I
Yeah,
realized it stayed in the
yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Good.
Um, Number 46, I will defend this band in this album. I'll especially defend this band's 80s output. Second album from Bon Jovi, 1700 Degrees Fahrenheit. Peaked at 37, would eventually go like 2 or 3 times platinum. I think at this point it was just gold. This week it drops from 39 to 46.
At 45, this is another one of the in-between albums, although I did remember it being out because I didn't know how to pronounce now at that point.
Yeah.
But Rick Springfield, 12 weeks on the chart at this point, peaked to 21, staying at 45 this week, though. I don't remember
Yeah.
the singles on this.
There were two like top 30 songs. It was Celebrate Youth and,
Celebrate State of the Heart?
and State of the Heart.
Okay, then
Yes.
never mind. I do remember it. Okay.
But neither of those were huge songs for him. But yeah. Number 44 is the Scorpions, Worldwide Live. Their live album debuts this week at 44. Ah,
There we
and
go. Glad this one came
let's
to
turn
me.
it
We've
over.
already talked most about
Let's
it.
turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Amy Grant at 43 with Unguarded. 5 weeks on the chart, climbing quickly. Find a Way being the big single. I remember seeing her do this on David Letterman, as a matter of fact, with the oversized shirt and all that, because she'd cover it up. It was, keeping it very, very clean. It's Amy Grant after all. But yeah, because of my friends at this time, I absolutely could not get away from this. I doubt they're watching, but if you are, you know who you are. Unguarded. Thank you for getting me this album between this and Age to Age. I heard it constantly.
um, at number 42, it peaked at 15, down to 42. Diamond Dave, his EP, Crazy from the Heat. Speaking of Brian Wilson, his biggest solo song peaked at number 3, his version of California Girls. It also had Just a Gigolo, and there were only 2 other songs, so they might as well release those as singles too. But anyway.
At 41, ooh, huge, huge, huge debut for Sting, Dream of the Blue Turtles. Debut week at 41. This would go on to be, we're talking Russians, Fortress Around Your Heart. If you love someone, set them free. What am I missing? Another huge
Love is
one.
the Seventh Wave.
Thank you.
And another song a lot of people talk about, I don't think it was a single, was Moon Over Bourbon Street.
Okay.
It's
The Russians,
vampires.
Fortress Around Your Heart.
Yeah,
I,
Fortress Around Your Heart is such a good song.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, number 40. You may know them as Eddie and the Cruisers, but they're actually John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, and their album Tough All Over, I guess, peaks at number 40 this week. And it's funny because I was listening to an old top 40. I forgot about their song Things Are Tough All Over. I remember hearing that all the time on the radio. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about this song. They had another one called CITY off of this
That's the
album
one
that
I
was
knew.
fairly
Yes.
big. So
Yes.
yeah, they weren't just on the dark side. They had at least two others that were top 20, I think. So
CITY
that's number
was a
40
tough
this
song.
week.
It was a good tune.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, 39. This is what happens when you give one of your best songs to a soundtrack and don't put it on your own album, apparently, at least at this point. View to a Kill soundtrack, 3 weeks on the chart. On its way up from 44 last week to 39.
And
Best
really
thing
kind
about
of
the
like
movie.
Hall and Oates, things weren't quite the same for Duran Duran after this either.
No, because
Power
stay tuned. We're going to
Station,
have more Power Station Arcadia.
Arcadia, yeah, yeah. Andy
Yeah,
Taylor goes solo, yeah.
Taylor's solo stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Number 38, R&B singer Freddie Jackson and Rock Me Tonight. It's up 5 this week.
Yeah. And number 37, at this age, I couldn't have picked him out of a lineup at this point, but George Thorogood with Maverick, 20 weeks on the chart, peaked at 32.
Number 36, the second solo album from Don Henley. This is a huge album, Building the Perfect Beast. It only peaked at 13. That's surprising to me, given the huge hits that were off this, like Boys of Summer and All She Wants to Do Is Dance, Not Enough Love in the World, and let's not forget the
Sunset
Sunset
Grill
Grill.
isn't a
Yeah,
hit, but classic, classic,
yeah.
classic.
So this week it's down from 30 to 36.
At 35, Luther Vandross, The Night I Fell in Love, 15 weeks on the chart, peaked at 19. It's down from 25 this week.
Number 34, this was his second album, although this is the first I'd heard of him, Paul Young and The Secret of Association. It's up 3 this week to 34. Of course, this had his version of Hall & Oates' Every Time You Go Away, which is a number 1 song. I don't think anybody knew it was a Hall & Oates song at that time, but I may have heard it once. I may have heard Casey Kasem say it, and I've remembered it ever since.
See, I couldn't stand that song because I absolutely loved both Come Back and Stay and Love for the Common People. I heard those songs
Yeah.
endlessly. So when this
See,
came out,
I saw those
there you
videos
go.
after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, so another one who wasn't in my wheelhouse back then, Bob Dylan at 33 with Empire Burlesque, 4 weeks on the charts, up 1 spot from 34 last week.
Number 32, the family group DeBarge. The title song was a huge hit. Rhythm of the Night. This week, the album of the same name drops down 1 to 32.
Anybody remember Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon? Here you go.
Right. Yeah. Was
You
that a
have the
break? Was that
glow.
one of those breakdancing movies? Or
It
was
was the right time frame for it. It was an
yeah.
unbelievably cheesy. It almost felt like what would later be referred to as a blaxploitation film. Um, yeah, the Shogun of Harlem was the bad
Oh,
guy.
because I think of that as a 70s thing.
Yeah, Bruce Leroy. That's what I'm saying. But well, yeah, but I don't think we can use that term anymore. I'm not sure how it
Yeah.
works. But
I had
point is,
yeah. I had no
this is
idea
probably the last vestige of that.
yeah. Outstayed its welcome, and somehow they had a big hit single from, but I don't think anybody knew. Like it was just, oh yeah, it's from a movie. Everybody just bought the single.
Right. Well, they were huge on the R&B charts. They had many singles off this album from that, but this was the big one. The title
Yeah.
track was the big
Well,
one
they
for
had "Who's Holding Donna Now."
yeah.
That was a big pop hit, but yeah, they had a lot more songs on the R&B charts. Yeah.
Yep. At 31, another one I wouldn't have heard until much later with Driver 8 and Can't Get There From Here, but REM with Fables of the Reconstruction. 3 weeks on the chart so far, up from 35 last week to 31.
Was this their third album?
I
Something like that?
believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 30, we mentioned Rick James earlier. These were proteges of his, the Mary Jane Girls. Don't take too long thinking about where the name came from, because you're right. The album is called Only For, Fouru, and it peaked at 18 this week. It drops from 26 to 30. This had a big hit single on it called In My House.
Yes, I remember that I remember that video. I was the right age for it, and I'll leave it at that. So at 29, we've got Little Creatures, Talking Heads, second week on the chart. Remember, and She Was, Stay Up Late, my favorite Talking Heads song, Road to Nowhere.
Road to Nowhere, yeah. And this song, I think if I'm right about this, this also has a song, Memories Can't Wait, which Living Color covered on their first album, which is kind of different, but yeah. Number 28, huge comeback album, still hanging in there, peaked at number 3, 57 weeks on the chart for Tina Turner and her album Private Dancer.
And 27, Air Supply with Air Supply, third week on the chart, on its way up from 38 last week.
Number 26, Katrina and the Waves, sort of a British American group, half and half or something like that. Their
Yeah.
self-titled album goes from 27 up one to 26, peaked at 25, must have been just selling steadily. Walking on Sunshine was a huge, huge hit.
Yeah. I think Katrina was from Kansas. Don't quote me on that.
I
But
think you're right, and the rest of them
Waves
were
were
from the
from the
UK.
UK.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
25, Sade with Diamond Life. 21 weeks on the chart at this point, all the way up to number 5. It's down from 20 this week.
Number 24, inevitably, when you talk about Rush, you talk about Time Stands Still, and Amy Mann is the voice on that song. Till Tuesday, and the album Voices Carry is at 24 this week. Title song was a huge hit for Till Tuesday.
Number 23, I remembered this one incorrectly. We've got the All-Nighter from Glenn Fry. 37 weeks on the chart, peaked at 22. I thought You Belong to the City was also on this album, and it is not. This is Smuggler's Blues and Sexy Girl. So,
Right.
not realize that that was specifically Miami Vice
Miami
soundtrack.
Vice. Yeah, it also doesn't have The Heat Is On, so it's like,
Right, yeah.
yeah. This is why greatest hits albums exist.
Yeah.
Number 22, comeback album for John Fogerty, Center Field. I think I've asked you this before. Does your version have Zans Can't Dance?
It does have Zans Can't Dance.
Awesome.
So
Look
proud of
look,
the
yeah,
fact.
look it up, kids.
It's
Yeah.
not Vance Can't Dance, it's Zans Can't Dance.
Zans, yeah. Number one
Absolutely.
album. This week it drops to 22.
21, another album I didn't know existed from them, but Brother Where You Bound, Supertramp, 7 weeks on the chart at this point, on its way up.
I
Didn't stop
remember that
here.
they had this album out. I'm not sure where it peaked, but I do remember the song Cannonball from this album. Minor hit. I've always loved the song, and the video cracks me up every time I watch it, starring Ron Perlman as a caveman. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, now we'll have to look it up.
It's the only hit they had after Roger Hodgson left.
Gotcha.
Number 20, the third solo album from Robert Plant, Shaken Stirred. This is a very different album for him. It's very keyboardy, very synthy, and it's got one of my favorite songs of his, Little by Little. And this week it's up one to number 20, which I think may be where it peaks.
Okay. This is another one of those in between albums for me because I knew Principal Moments and I knew Now and Zen, didn't know Shaken and Stirred.
This was
So,
not a. This ended up in the delete bins. Wasn't a big. I think it went gold after like 2 years or something.
okay, number 19, every one word title song I can think of theirs is probably on this except Celebration. We got Emergency with Kool and the Gang, 31 weeks in the chart. Did this have Cherish and Fresh and Misled, my
Misled.
gang
Yep.
song, and
Yep.
Joanna? Misled is their
I
best
think
by
Joanna was on the previous one.
Okay, thanks.
And then after this, they had an album that had a song called Victory. That was it.
Okay.
They
Yeah,
did have a lot
Misled.
of one. And I got to say, I was talking to my wife about this. I was looking up Kool and the Gang. I realized how little I knew about this group. They'd been around forever.
Mhm.
And the guy that I thought was cool was
JT?
yeah, he's not the
Yeah.
singer. I had no idea. But anyway,
Yep.
number 18, this album was everywhere in 1985. I remember it being a big deal when the CD version came out. It was the first CD to sell 1 million copies. Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. This week it's up 6 to 18.
And number 17, another album we couldn't get away from, didn't want to. Billy Ocean, Suddenly, 47 weeks on the chart at this point. Caribbean Queen, Lover Girl, title track Suddenly. There's at least one more I'm forgetting.
Uh, there
Uh,
was uh, there was Mystery Lady. That was
Thank you.
yeah. That's the minor one, but yeah, but you know, he just had the right sound for the time. It
Yep.
was a little pop, little rock, a little R&B. It was just great. Yeah. Number 16, one of the most, even though it was a platinum album, one of the most overlooked melodic rock albums of the 80s. Survivor and Vital Signs. Not a soundtrack song in sight. This had High on You, I Can't Hold Back, The Search Is Over, but there are other album tracks in this could have easily been hits. Broken Promises, Popular Girl, Everlasting. Love this album to death. This week it's up to 16. That might be where it peaked, but I'm not sure.
Number 15. Oh, as far as I knew, this was the second album of theirs that was on my radar. The follow up to Long After Dark, Southern Accents, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. 14 weeks on the chart at this point. Don't come around here no more. God, I love this album back then.
That's actually the only song I know from this album. Like,
Really? Oh,
yeah,
right now I couldn't, but back then, this is
yeah,
another one I listened to a ton.
yeah. Number 14, Howard Jones. I think this was his second album.
Yes.
Because I think his first album is called Humans Lib. Dream
Yes.
into Action. It's peaked at number 10 this week. It's down to 14. This had Things Can Only Get Better, Life in One
Life in
Day.
One Day.
And it had No One Is to Blame, but I think it was a remix version that became a
Yes.
hit. But it also had a song that I'd forgotten about when I was looking at this called Like to Get to Know You Well. I remember hearing that song on the radio, but I'd forgotten about it.
And 13, I think I learned this from you. Whitney Houston's self-titled album. A couple songs from Boy Meets Girl on here, correct?
How will I know? And well, I know that one for sure.
Yes.
They,
And the other one you thought on the other episode I watched of yours, you were correct because I looked it up. It's How Will I Know? And the other huge one right then was also them.
Saving All My Love for You. Oh, no.
No,
Oh, I Want to Dance with Somebody? No,
that's it.
no.
That's it. No,
That was their second. No, that was,
worth a look up. If you know,
yeah.
yeah.
I know How Will I Know for sure.
Yes.
That was the Boy Meets Girl duo.
Yes, two of the huge ones were them
Yeah.
on this album. But 16 weeks in the chart at this point, obviously still climbing. And thank goodness you got the next one.
Oh, well, here's the thing. It's only one of my favorite albums ever. A little band called Night Ranger, you may have heard tell of, Seven Wishes. And yeah, Paul's holding up my Night Ranger book. Thank you so much, Paul. But yeah,
you.
this album I think would peak at number 8. It was a platinum album. That's very, very cool. But this had Sentimental Street, Goodbye, 4 in the Morning. But the whole album is fantastic. The title song is fantastic. This Boy Needs to Rock, Interstate Love Affair. Just a great album all the way through. Number 11, and a band that I appreciate more as the years go by because they were a cut above, I think, from their peers. Rat, Invasion of Your Privacy, their second full-length album. This had Lay It Down, You're in Love, Never Use Love. This week, it's up from 15 to 11.
Yep. You lay it down still. I remember that hearing that song thinking this is one of the toughest songs I've ever heard in my life. Just
Pretty heavy
badass.
song to have hit the top 40. I had Drop D at a time
Yeah.
when that was not common. Yeah,
Yep.
what a killer riff. Oh,
Now it's stuck in a great
Yeah.
way, stuck in my head. Absolutely.
I've frustrated myself many times trying to figure out what are they doing? I can't figure this out. Yeah.
Mhm. Number 10, Be Yourself Tonight, Eurythmics, 8 weeks on the chart at this point. I will openly admit my ignorance. I very much knew who they were, but I can't differentiate the albums. What were the singles off this?
So this one had Would I Lie to You?
Thank
That
you.
was the
Okay.
it also had
Crazy Summer. That's where I knew it from, too. As
Oh,
well.
is that right? Okay.
The Savage Steve movie, One Crazy Summer.
I know that one because it's got What Does It Take by Honeymoon Suite.
Yes.
That yeah. But Be Yourself Tonight. What was it? There Must Be an Angel.
Okay.
And I think that Sisters Are Doing It for Themselves with Aretha Franklin.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Unless wait a
I was
minute.
trying to remember where Here Comes the Rain Again comes into play.
That's before this. See, this was a very different sound for them. It had the horns and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I can't
Thank you,
remember
Dave
if Sisters
Stewart.
Are Doing It for Themselves was on the Eurythmics album or whether it was on Aretha's comeback album or whether it was on both. But it's the same time period anyway.
Yep. We ended up switching, so it's up to you. Do you want to stick with odds or do you want to go even?
Oh, okay. Well, no, go ahead. Take number 9.
All right, number 9, 33 weeks on the chart. Obviously peaked at number 1 and hanging around at number 9. It would be back up again, I imagine, after this, but Like a Virgin from Madonna.
Yeah, still at this point, I think still spinning off songs because Summer of '85, I think Dress You Up was still climbing the charts from this. Number 8, the second album from Wham, of course, Make It Big. Peaked at number 1 this week. It's just down 1 to number 8. Would probably go back up. It was, very much had a lot of staying power. 36 weeks at this point.
I'm glad I got this one. Number 7, the only time this band ever played live together, it was for 10 million people. Saturday Night Live, they played both the singles off the Power Station self-titled album. The only time they ever played live together for an audience was Saturday Night Live. I remember that. So they did both Some Like It Hot and Get It On. At this
So
point, 14 weeks
did
on the chart.
Robert was Robert Palm? Did Robert Palm?
Yes, he
Okay,
was. I was
yeah,
glued to the television remembering that.
yeah. It was man, um, he was an R&B singer and he
Yep.
dabbled in all kinds of different music, but man, did he sound good singing
Ah,
heavier stuff like this.
yep. Very
Man.
much suited.
Number 6, I mean, this was unescapable. I think I got this in my stocking this Christmas. Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, peaked at number 1, 56 weeks in the chart, holding at 6, will probably go back up. And yeah, just a monumentally huge album for him. And I think a pretty good example of what the 80s was like because you didn't have to be a brand new, hot new artist, right? He'd been around for over 10 years and all of a sudden he's the biggest thing in the world, like definitely in the biggest thing in the US. I
Yep.
even had a
Seven.
book, I even had a book about Springsteen, like one of those junior high reading level books. Yeah, I was hardcore. I dressed up like it for Halloween one year.
Nice.
Yeah,
7 top 40 singles off this album.
yeah,
Unbelievably good.
yeah.
This whole, like, matter of fact, speaking of indicative of the 40 years, every album in this top 10 is just an absolute classic. Bring us to number 5, Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack, 27 weeks on, all these have been around forever at this point.
Yeah.
27 weeks on the chart, down from, peaked at number 1, obviously, down from just number 3. A lot of shuffling going on in this top 10, Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack. So,
Yeah,
Heat It
I
Up,
mean,
Neutron
this had
Dance,
Neutron Dance. It had Axel
New
F, the
Attitude,
title
Title of
song.
Now.
Yeah, The
Yep,
Heat is On, Glenn Fry. Yeah, it's huge, huge album.
yep.
Number 4, the last one I've got to show,
Ah, my
Bryan
copy
Adams'
from.
Reckless, his 4th album. And this would have, of the 10 songs on it, this would have 6 songs. And they were all at least top 20 singles. So this is practically a greatest hits unto itself. I cannot say this enough times. I will not say it enough times. Get the 2014 remaster with the
Yes.
extra songs on it because there are some gems on there like and songs that other artists did like Let Me Down Easy, like Boys Night Out, like Teacher Teacher, like songs that you know but you don't you
Teacher.
did
Oh my
but you didn't
God.
know but you didn't know he and Jim Valance wrote them. They were on such a roll at that point. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah. I own the rest of these on cassette and they're all buried. But number 3, Around the World in a Day, Prince and the Revolution, 10 weeks on the chart at this point. Obviously peaked at number 1, but this is another one that shuffled around. Number 4 last week, and now back up to 3.
Yeah, this had me follow as a follow-up to Purple Rain. It's never going to do what that did, but this had Raspberry Beret. This had some people forget about Pop Life. That was a
Yeah.
that was a hit, but I don't know that it had a video. But
No,
yeah.
did not.
Number 2, another song I think where most of the album was a single. Phil
Yep.
Collins, No Jacket Required. It was number 1. It's number 2 this week. It might be number 1 again. It just sold perpetually in and out throughout 85 and probably most of 86.
Yep. Yeah. Susudio, don't lose my
Don't
number.
lose my number. I've been hearing that one on the radio a lot lately. I love that song.
Yeah.
But even songs
Best
like
video ever. Best
yeah.
video
Oh, that's the reason I know Daryl Sturmer's name.
ever. It's me
Daryl
too.
Sturmer. Great.
Hey,
Great
great
sandwich.
sandwich.
Who's playing guitar? Daryl Sturmer. Anyway, good stuff. Good stuff.
All right.
So yeah, so that leaves number 1, the number 1 album, and we talked about this band already.
The U.S.'s apology for missing the hurting. We've got songs from the Big Chair, Tears for Fears, 15 weeks on the chart. Could not get away from this band, didn't want to, and even this is homemade, so don't go looking for this. But Everyone Wants to Rule the World was on the Real Genius film. They're not an official soundtrack, but I do have every song from the movie.
That must mean that you have a song called Summertime Girls.
Absolutely, Y&T. And who wrote a book about Y&T? Tim Derling.
It
Yeah,
all makes sense, right? Uh,
it's
but
all
yeah,
connected.
but I mean, like, yeah, what a fantastic time. But I mean, seriously, we've had jazz, we've had country, we've had metal, we've had hair metal, we've had just straight ahead rock, we've had folk, We've had
hip hop,
we've
R&B.
had contemporary Christian with Amy Grant.
Yes.
We've had a little bit of everything on here, and yeah, just what a time that was. So these were the top 200 albums this week, 40 years ago. How many of these albums did you folks out there have? Does anyone out there have a big chunk of them? Chris Preston, I'm looking at you because I know you've probably got a chunk of them. Anyway, Paul, I want to thank you for doing this, and yeah, thanks for holding up the Night Ranger book. I'll checks in the mail. Don't forget to check out Rush Fans, on hiatus right now, but lots of great content, lots of great episodes. Even though I'm in a few of them, don't hold that against them. We'll do it again.
I'm back.
We'll definitely do this again. And yeah, another chart video. Thanks everybody for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.